Hello, everyone. I have an announcement today. Thinking of quitting Blender. Just Blender is always just too difficult. Time consuming, modeling is just insanely long. I just feel like my art isn't as good as I want it to be. But yeah, if that sounds like you, I just want to let you know that you're not alone. And honestly, this video is here to kind of help and guide those who are thinking of quitting Blender and to kind of make ways of how to make Blender much more fun. How's it going, everyone? My name is Rayhan and I'm a self-taught digital artist who have been using Blender for almost 5 years. And usually when I make these videos, I always tend to kind of talk about tips and everything. But I also want to show you the speed art of one of my art pieces that I post on Instagram and TikTok, which I would really appreciate if you guys follow. It's called Rayhan.3D. And today's art piece is from the anime called Dragon Ball Z, my all-time favorite. And it's a location based on the Kami's Lookout. So yeah, let's get into the video, right? So before I talk about tips on what you can do to kind of have fun with Blender, I want to talk about the root cause as to why people give up very early. There's many reasons why. One of them is being because it's too difficult. Yes, Blender, the UI is insanely complicated. I can totally understand, right? There's so much going on. You don't know the controls. It's just like, yeah, it's crazy, right? The modeling itself can be very time consuming. Yes, that is like a lot of hard work to do in terms of understanding topology, UV, UV imagings, and all that stuff. Building complex shapes, totally understandable. Another one is comparison. A lot of people do compare themselves with a lot of artists who have built themselves to the higher standards, and just you're trying to kind of replicate what they've done, but realizing that it's not as good as they think it is. That feeling, I understand that feeling. Another thing is imposter syndrome, and this happens to a lot of like well-known artists as well, where they think they just got lucky. They think that it's not that good enough. People think, you just got lucky. It happens, right? And I'm pretty sure there's many more, but those are like the main key points. So having to kind of specify a few of those main points, right? What advice would I give to you, or for those who are starting Blender, to make sure that Blender, the learning experience, is fun? The first one that I like to mention about difficulty is to kind of start small. When you try in Blender, just because do you know how difficult it is, it don't mean that you have to go into straight away building complex shapes. So for example, when I started, I was thinking like, yeah, I'm gonna try and create the Mitsubishi Eclipse from the Fast and Furious, driven by Paul Walker, right? Now that is a beautiful car. I don't care. You can fight me for it. I don't really care. But obviously, that is such a very, very complicated car. It's compromised with a bit of complex shaping, the body kit involved, the wheels, the paintwork as well. It takes a lot of time, especially for a beginner. So what I would have done or advised my younger self would be, why don't you try something like a Cybertruck? They look alright. They look pretty cool. It's just basically a square shape, a box. Or maybe like the SpongeBob the SpongeBob car that he drove in the movie. Maybe that's a little bit intermediate level. But the idea is to keep things very small. It's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym and then bench press 500 kg. As a beginner, you start small and then you work your way to the top. It's like progressive overload, right? The idea of time consuming, right? I would say start small, right? Have a plan and write small sets of tasks that you need to complete. So with the Cybertruck, for example, obviously the way I use is that I use Notion. Now Notion is not being I'm not being sponsored by Notion whatsoever, but whoever's currently working at Notion and is watching this video, like, shout at me, right? Because I use you guys a lot, yeah. But I would say, like, let's say for example the Cybertruck, the first task I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna start with the shape, which is very simple, a box cube, right? Then the next I'll be like, yeah, let's just do the wheels. Then the next I'll start with the material, right? And each day you make sure you have a goal, and then you start to realize how quickly you can get the work done, and it becomes much more easier. It's like, again, I'm going to use gym as an example. Going to the gym is like, sometimes you'll feel lazy, sometimes you'll be like, I can't be bothered. But once you start 5 minutes of it or 10 minutes, you start to get into the groove, right? The next step, I would say, like the next advice I would say is experiment. Don't stick to just one type of art style. So, for example, initially I wanted to do car designs, right? When I got into Blender or like anime, but then I realized that there's such a different type of style artwork out there. So, for example, environmental design, there's building design, there's like architectural design. What else? There's photorealism. So I tried different type of things and I start to enjoy, but also learn new skills, right? So I think experiment different art styles and then eventually you start to find which one you click with the most, right? And I think when you look at your favorite artists, look at their oldest post, you start to realize that it's very, very different to what they're focusing on currently. And that would have not happened if they didn't experiment. So experiment is very key here. No, this is very cliche, but another point I'll say is keep going, stay consistent. Try at least 5 to 10 minutes a day if you can, and do small things. Try and continuously practice and focus on areas that you feel like you can improve on. If you feel like your UV editing or topology is rubbish, try and do like a little exercise on focusing on that area, and then you start to realize you get better in that field, right? The last and final point I'll give is, I know this sounds very contradicting to staying consistent, but taking breaks. Taking breaks is super important because as humans, we're not machines. We can't be doing things forever and ever. We get burnt out. And excuse me, had some nice wings today, so yeah. Taking breaks is super important because eventually you have to process all the knowledge that you had and the experience that you had from modeling and learning from new tutorials, etc., right? And if you're constantly just working every single day doing modeling, you're going to get burnt out. Eventually you need to take breaks. Eventually you need to go take a walk and try different things. So I would say taking breaks is super important. And once you take breaks and you come back, you start to realize how much you improved. And it's happened to me many times. I've taken plenty of breaks, and once I come back into it, I start to enjoy it more. My passions start to increase more, and I realize my improvement in modeling and areas that I thought I was rubbish at improved. Yeah, that's all the tips. I would say in summary, basically, just it's totally natural to feel that you don't find certain things fun because it's just too complicated, and some people quit too early. It happens, unfortunately it happens a lot. It happened to me, but I think those small tips that I've given is what helped me, and I'm curious to know what's helped you who's been in that situation before. And thank you guys for watching, and feel free to comment, like, and subscribe, and until next time, adios.